This time we modify the ballast in the station because of an error. We assemble an absolutely fabulous new footbridge and look at the two alternative permanent magnets from Kadee. Hi, welcome back to Chadwick Model Railway. I'm Charlie. Well, what's in this one? Well, we examine the station because I've missed a fundamental detail, so we've got to put that right. There's a review in the build of an absolutely cracking footbridge, and really it's something else, and I've been waiting years and years to find something like this. And also a quick look at some Kadee magnets that I hadn't really thought about using in the shunting yard. So let's get to it. Now, before I can really progress with the station area, I've got to come clean and admit to a mistake and fix that mistake before I go any further. So what's that, you say? Well, I've completely forgotten to put any cable troughing from one end of the station through to the other, and clearly there should be some there then to connect up the signals and the point work and everything else. Marvellous. Now this station is sort of similar to that down in Totnes, because Totnes has a fast up and a fast down, and it also has two tracks feeding the two platforms. But as you can see here in Totnes, the cable troughing is between the platform and the fast up, and the platform and the fast down. Now, taking Totnes as an example, what are we going to do here? Well, I could just cut one groove down the middle between the fast up and the fast down. But Totnes hasn't done that, and perhaps they've done it because of restrictions or limitations on the maintainability of it, because they don't want people in the middle of those two tracks. I'm kind of making it up really, but if you're into this sort of stuff and you've worked on the permanent way, perhaps you'll let me know down in the comments section. But for now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut one groove between platform 1 and the fast down and paint and lay the cable troughing in there. And I may, following advice, put another set of cable troughs on the other side, because it's not a train set, we want a bit of realism, and using Totnes as an example, then that's perhaps the way we should go. So what we're going to use, well, this is an oscillating cutter, I believe. A couple of guys at the club have got them, and quite straightforward really. It sort of oscillates from one side to the other, but the blade here is for removing grout from tiles, so it's a little bit wider than the other one. So what I thought I would do is start working my way along here, cut the groove, place in the cable troughing, pull it back out again, paint the cable troughing, put it in, and then see how it looks. So there we go. Let's crack on. Now I've scribed a little pencil line along the ballast, hopefully you can see that, and then these two pieces of cable troughing, this one is from West Hill Wagon Works and this one's from Pico. So obviously the West Hill Wagon Works will need painting, but we'll see how we get on using both of them. Right, so now we need to give it a bash. Yes, that'll do. Perhaps not push it quite down so far. Okay, yeah, I think we're good to go. So I just need to make the groove and paint this stuff up. What does the Pico stuff fit like? A little bit wider, isn't it? Anyway, I'll see you in a few hours' time. Now you may have noticed that mid-clip I did change from the cheap and cheerful Parkside oscillator to a mains powered Bosch one. This is the PMF 180E. This is, you get what you pay for, don't you? This is far, far better than this one, but it is mains powered. But it really did eat its way through this, a piece of cake. So I'm starting to, I realised I haven't got as much troughing as I'd hoped. So I need to get this painted and then poke it in with a little bit of glue. Well, as you can see, the trunking is in and it doesn't look too bad. But at the end of the day, you know, it's just a groove cut in the ballast, and in places the groove is too wide, so I need to go back and sort of make good the ballast around that area. I've given it a coat of Woodland Scenics concrete paint, nothing too elaborate, just to sort of get it into the right colour. But it won't be long before you see that I've actually run out of the West Hill Wagon Works cable troughing. But at the end of the day it's in and we've made a reasonable start, so I hope you agree that it's at least adequate. Well, I hope you agree that I made a adequate job of it really. It needs a bit more ballast sprinkling around where it's a bit sort of wonky and wide. None of it is glued in, so I need to sort that out and then sort of paint it. Of course it all needs weathering down anyway, but it's a piece of detail that I clearly missed and hopefully we've made up for it. But without one of these little jobbies it would have been extremely difficult, and I'd never used one before. Oscillating cutter. I've ordered one from Amazon with that takes Makita batteries, and hopefully, you know, that'll be sort of adequate, and I'll let you know how I get on with it. It's not a Makita one, it's just one that's a, you know, that takes Makita batteries. So there we go. Right, enough of that. Let's get to the bridge. Now you may be aware that I've been after a footbridge to go across the platforms in Chadwick Parkway for quite some time. I've been searching around for kind of 3 years really. Anyway, I went to a model railway show in Wincanton a few weeks ago, and there was Cardiff Canton. You may have seen this layout, it really is something special. And they had this bridge, only half the bridge because of the way it cut, you know, off the edge of the layout, so they had the span and the steps going down. I said to the guys there, where'd you get the bridge from? And Chris, who's, I think he owns the layout, said, I can't remember. But fortunately, good for good old Chris, sent me a link a couple of weeks ago, and here we have the resulting purchase. Now the company that Chris was using was yorkmodelrailway.com, and if you go to their website, this is the home page, and it's quite straightforward, just to click through the pages, find the gauge that you require, and then the items such as bridges, and then the bridges that are available. And this here is the one that I was sort of leaning towards. And after clicking through the images, you think, yep, that's the kind of one for me. However, when I gave them the ring and I spoke with Julie and said, Julie, I don't actually believe that the span is long enough for the 4 tracks at Chadwick. What can you do? So she said, yeah, leave it with me. Tell me the total span that you require and I'll get the item printed off and sent off to you. And here we are. Right, let's open it up and have a look. It says on the top, please open flat. I kind of understand that. Well, as you can see, we have the sort of plastic frets and all the rest of it. There's the huge bridge span that's going to go across Chadwick. And then we have the guardrails for the steps going up and down. And to be honest, just lots of bits. So now it's a case of spending a good while reading through this and checking out, and I'll get back to you. Now, as you can see, the bridge is actually too long for the span. I want the set of steps to come down here and another set coming down here. So obviously we've got to knock out 2 or 3 of these sort of segments to get it to fit. And this is exactly the way that the manufacturer intends it, because they don't know exactly the width of all your tracks. So we do need to cut this and the corresponding piece, and of course the walkway underneath. Now, as with all these kits, it's quite useful if you read the old instructions. And I've cut most of the things out now, and it's a case really of doing a dry fit. Run through the instructions, fit them out before you start gluing. You do have to cut away a few components, because like these 2 end pieces aren't required because the steps will come down here. But then again, if your steps went straight out, then you would need those pieces. So it's a case of reading the instructions and understanding it fully before you start cutting and gluing, really. And the weapons of choice, I've obviously got the old Swan Morton scalpel and EMA plastic weld for gluing them all together. I've also got a couple of steel blocks to give us a 90-degree angle when I start to glue things together, to make sure that these things here are actually perpendicular to the surface we're gluing to. Now I'll pop my glue as usual into a little jar, because it's less likely to be knocked over with my clumsiness. And then if I use the old plastic weld, and making sure I've got the thing the right way up, pop it into place. And then the thing to do with this stuff is simply put a line of it along the bottom, and you should be good to go. And then I mentioned about these blocks. If you put the blocks in, push it up against it, and then that should keep it drying vertically. Easy as that, really. Now I have deviated a little bit from the instructions, in as much as using the EMA plastic weld. It seems far from ideal. I've never really gotten on with this stuff, and I've reverted to Revell's polystyrene cement. To clear the nozzle, sometimes you might need some matchsticks, but it kind of works out okay. Now I'll just show you how I've done a couple. All I do is on the steps I dab a little polystyrene cement on both steps, and then with a pair of tweezers I pick up one of the steps and then pop it into place. And it really is as simple as that. Pop it in, make sure it's located, make sure it's level, and then simply go on to the next one. But what I've actually been doing is doing 2 at a time and then just working my way along. And then this is the one, very Blue Peter, so here's the one I made earlier, and hopefully you can see that because the way you can see through the steps, it does make it look so much more pleasant on the eye, perhaps. There's some staining on the sides here, and that's caught again by the plastic weld, and it kind of on this work surface it sort of picks up a colour. Anyway, it's all going well, so it's a case now of finishing off both of these with all the steps, and then having to measure up with these with the long cross piece to cut out 3 or 4 sections to make it the right width for Chadwick Parkway. Now, if you're enjoying this video, please be kind enough to hit the old subscribe button and perhaps give us a thumbs up. Thank you. Well, it's no surprise for me to say it's now the following day, and I've been over to the layout and measured up the old bridge, and I've removed 5 segments from the cross sections. Now hopefully you can see that there's the 5 I've removed, and that's how it will kind of sit together. So there's obviously a join here, and I might view that as a point of weakness. I've also cut 5 sections out of the walkway, but I've staggered the join for the walkway, and then the other section of the bridge I've staggered it again. So we've got a join there. You can see if I can get this lined up. So we've got a join there, a join here and a join there. So they're all kind of offset, and hopefully that'll add a little bit more strength to the bridge. Lovely. So now all I need to do then is glue all these together, get it in place, get the other side on, and then start on the steps to the outside, which is no big shakes. Get the steps on the outside done, and then we can think then about coupling up the step assemblies and fitting those in. So I think really we're nearly there. Now we're back to the Revels glue, switch glasses, and I do use my old Optivisor because my eyesight is far from good. I'm just going to pour the glue along the edge of the inside of one of the sections, and then coat the edge where the join is. And hopefully this will all go together wonderfully. Oh, now just cut the edge on there as well. A bit heavy on the glue on the underside there. And you might be able to hear it sort of clicking into place. And then these blocks should keep it upright. Well, as you can imagine, time has gone on and the bridge has come on considerably. I've constructed the little towers that it sits on, and it's worth mentioning that these steel engineers blocks are absolutely critical really for getting them to form up a square, you know, with 90-degree corners. There's really no other way I can think about, and I'll check out the show more tab to make sure I've got a link to these in there. They're not cheap as you'd expect, but these things will kind of absolutely last forever. They really are. To be honest, I wish I had more, because today I had one drying here and I wanted to move on and do another, but hey, such is life. But they are critical for making these little towers. One thing I said earlier, which I'll walk back on, and that is the use of the Revels polystyrene cement. No, I think the EMA weld, the plastic weld, is the stuff to go for, because it's far more instant. It's a little bit messy, ends up on your fingers, but it is a better product, whereas you have to sit and wait for this to dry. And this is something I wasn't going to use super glue on, because you know, you have to use super glue dissolvent if you make a mistake. But this is the stuff to go, just bear with it. There are these supports that go around the fabric of the bridge, but when you put them on, it gives it much more rigidity. And if I take this off now, it is much more of a sort of a solid construction. And as you can see, these are the towers at the back. I can't deny I've had a few steps come away, again because of this stuff, rather than using the plastic weld. But you know, I got them all in, and then I recoated the whole thing with the plastic weld, and hopefully it's good. My one worry bead now, I suppose, is when we take it over to the layout, once I've glued these little towers on, is will the whole thing wobble? And we don't know really until you put it in place. But I'll glue these towers on now, and then we'll get it over to the layout and see what it looks like. And so now on to the great unveiling. And I'd like to think that, well, it looks pretty nifty, I must confess, and it doesn't rock. All the legs seem to be at the right length. I must confess that between the last clip and this one of these front legs was actually glued the wrong way around. I had the sort of a long and the short legs the wrong way, so it was actually, after using the blocks even, it was still kind of octagonal rather than square, so I've sorted it out. What needs to be done to it now? Well, it needs to be sprayed grey, obviously, and then sort of weathered down. But before that, the manufacturers recommend that you fill in all the sort of little gaps where the the things clipped together in glue, and there's a bit of glue, well, there's quite a bit of glue residue on it, and that all needs to be rubbed down, then sprayed sort of good old traditional Halford's grey car paint, as it were, the primer. But to me it looks okay. Oh no, sorry, no it doesn't look okay, it looks lovely. And I don't know if you can see, this doesn't kind of rock, you know, I was worried about it twisting and not sort of sitting properly, but it does seem to sit on all 16 feet, 2, 4, 6, 8, yeah, all 16 feet. So I think it looks pretty nifty. And what does it look like from this side? Well, let's put another camera around there, and then hopefully we can see the sort of train view of it, and I must confess, I'm well pleased. I think that looks rather nice. However, I think it would be unfair not to have some kind of summary. This is a 2 or 3 day job to build this for me. Obviously I'm filming in between and doing all the rest of it, but it's not an easy kit to build. If you're you know, kind of a straight out the box modeler, this isn't for you. But if you've got an intermediate sort of skill base, then this is a lovely challenge. But please, you know, take some advice, and that is read through the instructions carefully, and if you don't understand, get on the phone to Julie, because I'm sure she will sort you out, as I did when I sort of came across the length of the bridge being too long, you know, not knowing where to cut it down, that sort of thing. And just a case of taking your time really, but the kit held together well. Yes, I made a mistake with the glue. You do need to use the EMA rather than a polystyrene cement, and I learned that the hard way, having to recoat stuff. But perhaps I'm a bit of a stick in the mud from the 70s, using, you know, polystyrene cement for sticking airfix airplanes together when I was a kid. But I think it looks pretty nifty, and it's a substantial thing. You know, it's kind of bulk. I've been waiting for this for some years really, to find the right bridge for the layout. And of course, in the meantime, when the layout's not in use, and you know, I'm cleaning track and everything else, well, guess what? We can take it out, we can stick it out of the way, put it up on a shelf somewhere safe until we get in there for a nice running session, and then pop it into place. Of course, you know, we need a couple of kids, we need some train spotters, we need people sat on the steps, and weathering and rust and all the rest of it. All part of the adventure. Now, the last video was all about shunting, and shunting's all well and good, but it's great to do it without the hand of God, to go in there, press a few buttons, do a bit of shunting without getting involved, you know, your fingers all over it. And that's what we tried to do. To help us, there was something called the uncouple shuffle, you know, which is a DCC thing, but you know, it's not the end of the world. But also we were using surface mounted magnets on top of the track, and also a couple of solenoid magnets mounted underneath. But someone was quick to point out, well actually Charlie, there's a permanent magnet that can go underneath as well. So let's do a quick comparison of the two permanent magnets. Now please excuse this little lash up, I'm just trying to show you the difference between these two permanent magnets produced by Kadee. This is the normal one you'll see, the surface mounted one, whereas this one is mounted subsurface. And it's 6 millimeters thick, that's the thing to remember. So how do they both work? Well, on these you've seen before on last week's video, when I just come along here and then we just uncouple over the magnet. And then leaving the knuckles open, you can then push the wagons and they don't couple back up. So you can pull away, marvellous. Now, when we come to the other magnet, nothing's changed really. We come across the top of the magnet, we sort of stop, we pull back, they uncouple. If you push them with the knuckles open, they don't couple up. Excellent. What more could one ask for? But the truth of it is, these are half the price of those, if you like. So you get 2 of these in a packet. In the UK, I believe it's for around about £8. Whereas we get 1 of these in a packet for around about £8. So you can see the disadvantage of going for this option. However, this one you can ballast over the top and hide. Much better, isn't it, really? So you don't have this awful sort of ramp sticking in the way. But what happens if you put it in the wrong place? With this one, especially if you've just glued it down with some hot glue gun, you can simply prise it off and move it a couple of inches or wherever to its new location. If you scrap the layout, you can take it with you. it's much more versatile. But here you're committed. You have to be sure that's exactly where you want it. So there we are. 2 permanent magnet options from Kadee. Well, I hope you found today's video interesting, and my thanks go to York Model Making, who supplied the bridge, and it cost me £64.70 and worth every penny. But more importantly, the after-sales service was there. And, Julie, I'm stuck. And they sorted out the issues, no problem at all. So do visit their website and have a look around. There is some good stuff there. Marvellous. Anyway, that wraps this one up. If you've enjoyed it, please give us a thumbs up. And I'd like to thank the patrons who make it all possible. There's the old subscriber button. If you're not a subscriber, please hit it. Remember, subscribing is free. There's a video here, and I'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye-bye.